Recently, Juan Carlos and I did a 3-part sermon series that covered the entire Bible, from Genesis to Revelation in 3 sermons. And now to finish that, we decided we would talk about what we thought was the most important Bible passage in the entire sweep of the Bible. What is the single most important passage? So it turned out we disagreed. Our 2 scriptures we picked were different, of course, and I'm going to share both of them with you. But first, I want to step back and say, to ask what the most important Bible passage is a contrivance. There's no one single passage that is the best or the most important. Or if there is, it would be the passage that is most impactful to you on any given day. Maybe it would change. So there's an artifice to this whole idea. There's no one single passage that is better than all the rest. Also, to ask the question, what is the most important scripture, is a very modern question. Remember with me, for the sweep of history, most Christians did not have a Bible themselves that they were reading. That question I'm asking, the most important passage, is based on a technology, the printing press. Suddenly then, by about 1800, people had their own Bible that they were poring over, and you could find a passage. Before that, people just heard the scriptures, worshiped the scriptures, knew the stories. So this is a modern question. And secondly, or thirdly now, let me say, to ask what is the most important passage, it makes it sound like we're casting the Bible as some final authority. Let's talk about biblical authority for just a moment. The Bible is our wonderful primary story and narrative. It frames our identity as a people of God. But remember, what's the ultimate authority? God. God relativizes the authority of the Bible. And for me, Jesus Christ, my personal relationship with Jesus Christ, means the Bible, I wouldn't say the Bible's secondary, but foremost is my direct relationship with the Christ. So I wouldn't want this question to make it sound like we're elevating the Bible above the divine. The Bible is our wonderful story as a people of God. Okay, enough caveats. So JC and I couldn't agree. He selected Ephesians 4, and it was an interesting choice to go to one of Paul's letters, one of the captivity letters, into one verse in Ephesians where it says, be patient, be gentle, be humble, tolerate one another with an atmosphere of love. Okay, first of all, that is a beautiful passage. But I thought, that's interesting selection. So I asked him, why did you pick that? And he said, well, because of our times. JC explained to me that these times that we're living in don't feel gentle or patient or humble. And we're tearing ourselves apart, and the ways we think of one another, it's not an atmosphere of love. And I said, okay, in some ways that might be the most important passage for our time. Be gentle, humble, and patient. I don't always live up to that. You know, just this week, I went to Colorado with my wife's 2 sons. They're 18 and 20, and they'd never seen the mountains. So I figured I'd got to take them on a hike because the Colorado mountains are awesome. So we start this hike. It's supposed to be a 7-hour hike, goes to about 12,000 feet in Rocky Mountain National Park to Lawn Lake. And I thought, okay, that's going to be an experience for them. So the 3 of us start up the path, and it's a steep up. And the 20-year-old is a fitness instructor and lifeguard. The 18-year-old does some MMA training, and so they're pretty fit. And with 3 guys on a path, the 20-year-old set a fast pace, but I wanted to show that I could handle it, so I tried to get him going even faster. The 18-year-old's just trying to come along. We got super competitive. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't patient. So we're just plowing up the mountain. We did this 7-hour hike in 4 hours and 55 minutes. We were literally running half the time, trying to outdo one another. It was fun, but it was testosterone-laced and competitive. We had a good time, but really, so much of our lives aren't very gentle and patient and humble. We were trying to win on that hike somehow. Our culture is a lot about winning, but Ephesians tells us to be gentle, be patient, be humble. JC picked a good one. I decided that the most important Bible passage, again, remember, that's a contrivance. The most important Bible passage is John chapter 8. Okay, so I knew if I was going to pick just one passage, it had to be about Jesus. For me, the entire scriptures culminate in the ministry of Jesus Christ, the personhood of Jesus Christ, the divinity of Jesus Christ. It all culminates there. So it had to be a Jesus passage. I chose John chapter 8. Let me remind you of it. Jesus is teaching at the temple, and suddenly the scribes and the Pharisees drag out this woman caught in adultery, and they say to Jesus, "The law tells us we must stone this woman. What do you say?" You see, they're trying to trap Jesus, right? If he says yes, it shows that he's not as gentle and nonviolent as he says he is and allows a woman to be killed. If he says no, he violates the Torah. They're trying to trap him. And so Jesus simply says to them, "Oh, let the first who is without sin throw the stone." And then he just bends down and draws in the sand. And one by one, the scribes and Pharisees drop their stones and walk off. And soon it's only the woman standing in front of him. And he says, "Has no one condemned you?" She says, "No." And he says, "Neither do I. Go and do not sin again." That whole scene, for me, is a perfect presentation of who Jesus was. Even his style of his personality and being in this passage is so beautiful. First, do you notice that he just is able to decompress the pressure of the scene? When someone is about to do violence, he just sort of deflects and bends down and draws in the sand. Look at how agile he is in dealing with a complex situation. And then, after they've left, the scribes and the Pharisees, he says to the woman, "Just go and do not sin." He could have preached at her. He could have laid on a lot of moral platitudes. And instead, he said to her what he would say to any of us. He'd say that to any of us. Go, don't sin. He didn't say anything more. The very style of Jesus in this passage shows what he is really about. And then ultimately, it shows how completely nonviolent he is. We underestimate that in the Gospels. He is so completely nonviolent, he won't even self-defend. He'd rather go to the cross and die. Jesus is trying to remind us that violence doesn't solve any problems. You see, in our world, we think we can fix things with violence. We just assume at some point that's the ultimate solution. It never is. Violence will never solve any of our problems. Jesus presents a way of being to which we should aspire. It seems impossible. It seems nation states have to defend themselves, don't they? We have to lash out if we've been are in danger. Jesus is presenting a new way. And I called it the most important passage because it would change our world if we didn't trust violence, if we didn't think it would somehow fix things. It would change everything. Jesus wants to change everything. So, there's two passages, but you know what? You pick your most important. You pick a passage that lays itself upon your heart and transforms you. God bless.